Well, you know who likes Ricky Skaggs? Our next guest. He actually is a friend of Ricky's as well. Joining us now is James Rosen, Fox Chief Washington correspondent and author of the new book, Cheney One-on-One.
And country music legend.
That's right. And a candid conversation with America's most controversial statesman. James, good morning, Jimbo.
Great to be back with you, my friends.
It's good to be back with you. So I want to start off by the president's been taking up this issue of guns. Sort of interesting, James. He holds this town hall meeting on another network, and it's, by the way, it really wasn't a town hall meeting because it was invite only. A town hall meeting is something that is open to the town, but it wasn't. But nonetheless, we'll let that all aside. He comes to defend his actions after he's already taken. It seems to me that that's sort of backwards. First of all, you circumvent Congress, and then you circumvent the people, but then you come back to convince the people that what you did was right.
Well, look, it's a rhetorical function of the presidency for any occupant of the Oval Office to go out and want to sell what he has decided. So I don't begrudge the president that opportunity. The question that I raised this week was about the nature of the president's rhetoric. Because after the Gabby Gifford shooting 5 years ago, and President Obama himself has been reminding us for the past week that that incident was 5 years ago, there was a kind of a national debate at the time about the national debate and the language we were using. And some on the left, for example, were faulting people like Sarah Palin for using campaign literature that had certain selected politicians in the crosshairs and so forth. You'll remember that John Boehner stopped talking about job-killing regulations and started talking about job-crushing regulations. There was a discourse about the discourse, and President Obama himself, at the memorial service in Tucson, Arizona 5 years ago, said, words to this effect, I'm paraphrasing, but fairly closely, that we have to talk to each other in ways that heal and not wound, and that we cannot lay all the blame for that which ails the world at the feet of those who happen to think differently than we do. And that was instantly hailed, as one of President Obama's most memorable addresses. And yet 5 years later, in the tearful East Room appearance this week when he announced his new restrictions on gun access, President Obama himself spoke of the lies of the gun lobby. And he spoke of the gun lobby holding Congress and the American people hostage. And I asked Josh Earnest, the White House press secretary that day, if this wasn't an example of the very divisive and violence-tinged language that the White House itself had previously deplored. And Ernest told me he thought it was an apt metaphor.
An apt metaphor to say that the gun lobby holds Congress hostage and the American people hostage. Well, there you go. I mean, they've got different set of rules, don't they, James Rosen? Speaking of a different set of rules, what do you make of the revelations over the last couple of days about Hillary Clinton's emails? I know you've been covering this story quite a bit there at Fox News, and you personally, James. And the latest that Hillary Clinton not only had, up to 1,200 top secret emails, classified emails on her server, but also she was surprised that one of her own State Department employees was using a private email address.
Yes. This was an exchange, that was released just yesterday by the State Department, in which then Secretary of State Clinton typed out in an email using her own private address. There was an exchange between her and aides about a piece of analysis about Libya that was forwarded to her. And she apparently thought it was thoughtful and said, "Where does this person work now?" And one of her aides said, "For us." And then she then expressed surprise. She said, "I'm surprised if he works here at State that he's using a personal email account." And she typed that on her own personal email account. But an even more damning, I thought, email that was released just yesterday featured Secretary of State Clinton counseling one of her own aides on how to send something to her in a, quote, non-secure way. Oh. And I think that that's potentially a very damning bit of business there, because it shows that Secretary Clinton was mindful at the time she was using this personal account that there are secure and non-secure things, and that there are different ways to send them and to evade certain restrictions and regulations and rules about how to go about sending secure things. And so I think that email will garner a lot of attention going forward.
I noticed that these emails got released at like 1 a.m. this morning. I mean, yeah. I have this thing about news. It makes me mad. It really does. How the people in this town manage the release of news that we, the American people, are entitled to.
Sure. Well, this is one thing I've always said that makes the Obama presidency not really a transformative one as there were hopes it would be in the early days, but rather a conventional one, which is that they release bad news on Fridays at 5 p.m., just like every other administration. In this case, the State Department has been running behind schedule, as you know, in its requirements for making available and public former Secretary Clinton's emails. I suppose we will have to take their word that they're going as fast as they can, and that 1 a.m. just happened to be the time at which they could get these out. But again, we come back to the fact that by Secretary Clinton's own account, there were something like 63,000 emails sent and received on this private server, and that she herself, before their existence became known to the public, deleted about 30,000 of them because she alone decided, she and her lawyers, that they were personal in nature.
Yeah.
And that's 48% of the volume, if we're just to take her word for it to begin with, that's how many there were. So, as Donald Rumsfeld famously said, we don't know what we don't know.
And apparently we'll never know unless they can recover those emails from the backup drive. James Rosen's our guest. His book, Cheney One-on-One, A Candid Conversation with America's Most Controversial Statesman, is a must-read. Please pick it up. James, you've been following American politics for many years and presidential politics. Here we are a little over 3 weeks before this Iowa caucus, something that we've never seen before, this many candidates still making it this far. Who do you think is the most interesting candidate going forward with Iowa and New Hampshire looming?
Well, one of the other features that we've never seen before is a figure like Donald Trump.
Yes.
And the staying power of a figure like Donald Trump. I think that the question has shifted somewhat, subtly but perceptibly, that we used to ask, can Donald Trump possibly win the GOP nomination? And now it's more commonly asked, is Donald Trump electable in a general election setting? And the shift in that question is itself an indication of his achievement to date, shall we say, even though no votes have been cast. As my friend Carl Cannon at Real Clear Politics likes to say, as of yet there are no Trump voters. There are just people who tell people that they intend to be Trump voters. So we'll see how he does.
Yeah.
But in answering that question, is he electable in a general election setting, our natural instinct is to lunge for metrics and data and numbers and polls and to say, well, he's alienated X percent of this category and Y percent of that category. Therefore, it forces upon Donald Trump and him the requirement of capturing an impossibly high quotient of this category. And I have to say that Donald Trump, I grew up with Donald Trump in New York. He was more or less a permanent fixture of my life every day in the tabloid culture of New York City. He may be new to the business of campaigns and elections, but he is not new to the business of messaging and media manipulation. And he is one of those singular characters, like Muhammad Ali, who makes his own rules and defies metrics. In the beginning, the keepers of the metrics in boxing said Muhammad Ali could Cassius Clay could never win because he holds his hands too low. He snaps his head back to evade punches. That's not how you do it. He can't win. And in this cycle, we've seen all the keepers of the usual metrics say Donald Trump can't win for this reason or that reason. He's someone who's been told, I bet, his entire life, you'll never be as big as your dad. You'll never put that building there. You'll never operate in country X. You'll never have appeal to a mass network television audience. Yeah. And yet, through all of his flaws, and many people find him repellent, he finds ways to win. He defies metrics. And so I think one would be unwise to immediately discount his prospects in a general election. So
right.
You asked about Iowa and New Hampshire. Gosh, it's looking close, and Ted Cruz is making a very good run of it.
All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. James Rosen, Chief Washington Correspondent from Fox News. We appreciate you joining us.
Oh, thank you. Hey, Brian, can I tell you one last thing?
Very quickly.
Real quick. I sent you something via UPS. You're going to get it today. I want you to tell your listeners about it on Monday.
All right.
Ooh, nice tease through the weekend,
Wow.
James
All
Rosen.
right, there you go.
All right. Thank you very much.
Roger has
right,
taught
boys.
him well with that tease.
Yeah.
That's good.